Good evening, everybody. Not my usual surroundings. I'm outside Ashton Gate, as you can see, all locked up by the time that Shane Duffy and Johannes Torp came through for their post-match interview. So I've been forced into the car park. I'm currently stood out the front after Norwich City's defeat here this evening. Obviously, 1 win in 8 now for them, and it's just 1 point from 3 in 7 days in a week that should have been maybe one of real opportunity, has ended probably confirming what we already knew, that Norwich City will be playing Championship football again next year, that their playoff hopes have all but ended. And obviously heading into an international break probably comes at a good time for Norwich just to reset and to regroup and to rethink and to plan and all of those elements. And the frustrating thing I think about tonight is there are plenty of good bits that you can pick out of it, and that's been the case I think for most of the games this season. There's been plenty that you can look at and you can analyse and you can assess and you can point towards evidence that there are green shoots and that Norwich City are heading in the right direction. And then on the contrary, there's the naivety, there's the defensive lapses, the fragility, the softness, the inability probably to churn out wins consistently in this league that have proven costly. It means that they are not higher in the table than maybe they should be. I mean, they've come away from home tonight and they've lost 2-1. They've had 20 shots, 5 on target. Again, I know people don't like expected goals, but they've amassed nearly 3 of those. If you replicate that performance consistently, particularly away from home, you're going to win more games that you don't. But again, we're talking about the reason they didn't win this game, the reason they didn't at least draw this game, is because of themselves, really, and because of that ability and that knack that they've managed to achieve this season of not being ruthless enough in either box, of not being able to take opportunities when they come, but equally to concede really bad opportunities as well. And pretty much every opportunity they concede at the moment ends up in the back of their net. And I think that is the puzzling bit, because if you want to strip it back in purely coaching terms, what is a coach's job? It's about creating as much chances as you can, and it's about conceding as little. The little bits in terms of finishing and those type of elements, that's down to quality and players in the moment and composure and all the aspects that you need. Clearly, there are some tactical issues with Norwich. That's not me absconding Johannes Torp and his coaching team of responsibility. I think we can see out of possession, they are a significantly weaker team than they are in possession. It's the reason they've lost this game tonight. But there's plenty of good stuff as well. And I think this is the balancing act, I guess, of where people are. Do you believe enough in the good stuff that you're happy to let this go into a year 2? Or are you frustrated with the bad stuff and you think that outweighs the good stuff? So it's always a scale with these things. Where I am personally, I think I am feeling, I feel like I need to see more of this, want to see more of this before coming to a real judgment. I mean, we can throw in a whole load of things, mitigation, that maybe people would argue are excuses, but tonight is the first time that Norwich have had Nunez, Sargent, Sainz and McLean all on the same pitch since October. They named again a different midfield combination. They're having to chop and change their team. They've had 2 different goalkeepers, none of which are their first choice, playing in the last 2 games, and that's happened all season really, and it's probably little wonder why you can't achieve any consistency with that. Let's go through the game then. Norwich made 3 changes. I thought that was fewer than I anticipated, to be honest, given the proximity of this game to what happened on Tuesday. I can equally understand why maybe Johannes Torp wanted to give the bulk of those players an opportunity to put it right. Norwich started the game weirdly. I felt the midfield 3, Sorensen, McLean and Marcondes, I felt were too static. I thought the runs of Knight, of Bird, of Mehmeti caused them far too many problems, and they got the press wrong. And what that does is, if you jump too late, you then expose, one pass and it exposes your back 4, and Bristol City can create overloads. I mean, you look at the first goal, it's the second goal they concede tonight. Look at the distance between Duffy and Cordoba when the ball is given away. Sorensen is occupying a space and gets caught ball watching, really. That then goes out. Wells runs off the back of McLean into the space between those 2 centre-backs. Duffy then gets caught in 2 minds. Do I go and get tight to him? Do I stand off him? He opts to sort of do neither, and Wells slots the ball home. The first one, again, comes from a situation where Marcondes loses possession. Doyle jumps, doesn't get there. Norwich are exposed. Sykes runs down the right-hand side, cuts inside into his left, and it's a brilliant finish. And with their 2 opening shots on target, Bristol City find themselves 2-0 up. In that time, Norwich City hit the post through Borja Sainz. They had a Callum Doyle effort saved. They had an Emi Marcondes effort saved. And this really is the difference, I think, this season, because Norwich have to create, and you see they've had 20 shots, they've scored 1 goal. Bristol City scored 2 from 2 shots on target tonight. That is the fundamental difference between Norwich City and success at the moment. It's both boxes, and it's that ability probably to grind things out. And people say it's a defensive issue, and that's right to some extent. But the issue tonight was the midfield. It was too static. It wasn't able to press in the right way. And when you're playing out from the back, that has to be so watertight in terms of the positions, the trust that you build up, and that is then how you get out. That is your route to playing through teams. And they did it on occasion because they constructed the opportunities that we've spoken about, and they did fashion opportunities in the first half. And good ones as well. We're not talking about half chances or pot shots from the edge of the box. We're talking about Borja Sainz running through and hitting the post. We're talking about Callum Doyle from close range, Emi Marcondes from close range. There was others as well. And it's that other end at the moment that is baffling because, and I've said this before, they don't really concede what would be defined as high quality chances, but they concede enough chances that teams know how to play against them. You saw it from Bristol City tonight. You sit in, you press them relatively high. It doesn't have to be a hugely intense press. It just needs to be decent and organised. You force a high turnover, and within 2 passes, you've done what Norwich City needs to take 50 or 100 to do in terms of constructing opportunities. And that will be, I think, when Johannes Torup and his coaching team head home, that will be the real thing that irks them tonight, I think, because they've come away from home. They fashioned, I don't know the exact numbers, but they fashioned more opportunities tonight than probably any away game this season. If not, it would be well up there. And they've come away having been beaten. And that is the real frustration tonight. And we're beyond luck because it's now beyond luck that Norwich City are in this position in terms of, Oxford scored with their only shot on target, Blackburn scored with their only shot on target, Bristol City have scored with their 2 first shots on target tonight. Could have been 3. There was a shot from Knight from the edge of the box in the first half that George Long has sort of parried straight into the feet of Nahki Wells. I don't think anyone anticipated George Long producing the quality of save he did to then push it over the bar, but he did. And that prevented the game from going 3-0. And then at half-time, Norwich changed it. They went to a back 3, and that offered them probably a little bit more solidity, matched Bristol City up. And, we're seeing at the moment teams, and Bristol City do tend or have played with a 5 at points this season, but teams are doing that because of the way that Norwich like to put 5 on the final line. And, that is another challenge in itself. But Norwich reverted to that. I thought it worked well in terms of blocking off some of those central runs that Bristol City were creating. It just made them a little bit more solid. There were more bodies in central areas to get blocks on things, and the midfield of McLean and Marcondes did well at that point, I felt. And then on the counter and in transition, they were a lot more effective. They constructed opportunities. I mean, we can talk about coaching all day long, and as I've said, there are bad points from today's performance. There are good points. You can't. Antti Sienat's blazing a shot over the bar from 8 yards or whatever from a cutback. I'm not sure that that's down to coaching. Clearly, of course, you can coach him in those positions to be more composed. I recognise that, but that is a composure quality in the moment thing, and that's the thing I think with Norwich. It's those fine moments. And I spoke about this after Sheffield Wednesday. You watch this team in possession, and at times they blow you away in terms of how good they are and their combinations and the style and whatnot. Off the ball too often, they are amateurish. They're standoffish. They don't get presses right. They don't get organisation right, and that bit is the bit at the moment that is proving costly to them, because when it comes to defending transitions, I don't think their rest defence is good enough as well. And by that I mean, you look at teams who are able to really dominate games and push teams up to keep them in their own half and keep them pinned there. Norwich don't really have that ability yet. And so when, I say there are positives to what I'm seeing at the moment, there are in possession, the chances they create, some of what they do defensively, not all of that. And I appreciate that's maybe, confusing for people to hear when they've conceded so many goals, but there have been good aspects of that. Of course, I recognise that we're in March and we're not in September, and some of these issues that we've seen have reoccurred all season. And that is, I think, the frustration that people have with it. And that I can totally understand, because when you see a team that seemingly isn't learning from those defensive frailties, coach as well, he's young. I've said this a few times, in his 3rd full season as a head coach. That is, incredible, really, to be in a new country, a new job, a new league, and to make the mistakes I guess he's making is difficult, but probably to be expected in the same way as those young players. So. Yeah, look, it is what they are this season, I think, and all of the reasons that I've said is the reason why they are going to be what they are this season, which is a mid-table championship team. That is, I'm going to be honest, what I expected. I probably expected them to finish a little bit stronger than this. 1 win in 8 is not great. I do think there's been some good performances in there. Not that that, of course, means much in terms of results, but in terms of what they're trying to build consistently, there is very much a process here in terms of Johannes Oftorp believing. I'm not saying it's well, it is my belief, but it's his belief that if you can get your performances to a certain level and get them consistently, then results will follow. And what we are seeing at this moment in this season is performance building, and of course, the hope is that in year two, in year three, that then builds you up to be able to be a bit more successful as a team. Because primarily what these verdicts have been this season isn't me talking about opposition teams outplaying Norwich City or cutting through Norwich City or asking them significant defensive questions where they're outplaying them. We've not seen a Norwich team lose a game by 3 or 4, or by 3 we have, but not by 4 or 5, and that was the case in Farke's first year, for example, and Wagner's team in his first year went away to Middlesbrough and lost 5-1. Dean Smith as well had it. So they are competitive, but the reason they are not winning games is because of themselves, and the reasons they are losing games is because of themselves. And they are at the moment too easy to play against and too predictable, I think, and too easy for opposition coaches and teams to set up against. And there will be moments, as there have been this season, where they look excellent and they look brilliant. And, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, isn't it? And I think we've had all of that in the extreme. We've had it all probably tonight in terms of the good stuff that Norwich City can do, chance creation, the bad stuff, the finishing, the ugly stuff, the out of ball stuff, and the pressing. What I will say tonight is, though, I thought the change to a 3 was effective. I thought it worked. I thought Norwich City looked more competitive, more composed in the second half. They were better defensively, but they created more as well. Which is staggering, because at one point they had a back 3 of Sorensen, Duffy and McLean, which I don't think anyone had on our bingo cards in 2025, but it happened. And Doyle, I thought on the left wing back was effective. This is, again, where I think Johannes Oftorp maybe has to learn as well, because there are moments where Norwich make changes in the game where they make one sub, but actually we see 3 or 4 positional changes on the pitch. That causes so much disruption to a team and so much upheaval. I mean, tonight, for example, we saw Callum Doyle start at left back, then it was a left wing back, then he moved inside to centre back, then he was a left wing back again, and he was getting joy at a left wing back. That's difficult. We saw Antti Sienats on the right, then up front, then in midfield, then as a left wing back. So all of these changes, Kenny McLean, centre midfielder, centre back, Jakob Sorensen, centre midfielder, centre back. All of these changes, to me feel like, and we saw it a little bit with Farke in his first. I don't want to keep harping back to that, but I think there are similarities. We do see. Farke used to do that in terms of changes, where he'd make one change and it felt like there were 3 players changing their position. And I think in this league, because of how quickly the momentum shifts and how quickly the pace of the game is, you can't afford really to do that. There needs to be straight swaps, and they need to be effective. So again, there are points to learn on this. And Norwich are mid-table. You look at where Bristol City finished last season, for example. They were 11 points behind Norwich. There were 2 things I guess we could point to the end of last season. Norwich played Bristol City and Swansea, both at Carrow Road. Both those games ended in draws. Bristol City under Liam Manning were 11 points behind Norwich. And this season they're now 5th after this win. They're a significantly better team. They're a better, well-coached team. And you compare that with Swansea, who under Luke Williams looked also good and have gone in the other direction. So I think, what does that tell us? It tells us that nobody really knows yet what direction of travel this is going to head in, and what way it's going to go. And that's frustrating for people to hear, because when you're a football fan, you want to see your team win, and you want to see your team win now. But the changes that Norwich made this year in terms of the personnel, in terms of the coach, sporting director, ownership, we can look at all of those levels. Different strategy, different style of play. Throw in the injuries, throw in obviously the upheaval last summer in terms of this. In a different world is a Norwich City team that has Jonathan Rowe in it, that has Abu Kamara in it, and maybe this season does look different, and maybe that possibility to make up that gap to the top 6 is a lot more achievable than it is at this moment in time. But there's been too much change and upheaval and issues this year that means that is going to be beyond them. And that's, to be honest, what I expected and anticipated. I probably expect them to be a little bit better at the moment. I think that's the major criticism, because again, what they're doing is they perform well at Blackburn. They performed okay against Oxford. I wouldn't say it was well, but I think they created enough chances to win that game, even though I don't think they created enough. Sheffield Wednesday, as bad as the second half was really good for 45 minutes. And tonight, again, barring sort of a 15-minute spell in the first half where they looked kamikaze in terms of their defensive shape, there was a lot of good stuff in there, but it's not translating into results. And whilst that remains the case, there's going to be question marks, understandably so, because you don't win games. You can be as good as you like in terms of all of the aspects that I've spoken about. But if you don't win games, then people are going to ask questions of you, and understandably so. And that is where Norwich City are at this moment in time. And it's okay to ask those questions. It's okay to not believe that this is going to go anywhere, and that is people's right. And the flip side is that it's okay to want to look at this more analytically and more optimistically, and that's okay as well. There's no right or wrong way. Nobody from either camp, on either side, anywhere, even the people at the very heart of it, know how this is going to pan out and how this is going to go. My view is, I think we need to give it time to see that. And if we're at this stage next season and Norwich City are in the same position and it's frustrating and it's mid-table and they're inconsistent and we're seeing similar patterns, that is the point where maybe you then have to consider, right, do we pivot in a different direction? Do we change personnel? Do we change the coach? Do we change the players? But right now, I think this season is probably, with the cards that they've been dealt, with the factors that are for them and against them, is too much. And that's okay for where they are right now. Will it be okay next season? I don't know. We'll have to see. And I get it's difficult for fans. And, you know, there were 1,300 or so that were here tonight who made a trip, I guess the bulk of them from Norfolk, wanting to see their team win. They're not bothered about next season, and rightly so. And that is, I guess, the emotional part of being a fan, and that's okay. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to do that. So yeah, that's where I am tonight. A little bit more philosophical, but I think Norwich are, and again, I'm going to use the word unlucky to come away empty-handed from this. But I recognise there'll be people on the other hand screaming through the screen saying, well, if it's this many cases, is it unluckiness? And the answer to that is also no. And almost for me, and I'll end on this point, almost one of the most frustrating things for me this season has been how good Norwich City have been in bursts, in parts, when they've blown teams away by 3 and 4, and you look at it and you think, oh, okay, I can see it. I can see an effective style of play. I can see young players performing. I can see all of those elements. And that's almost as frustrating as when Norwich City do what they did on Tuesday night and they produce the second half like they did, and they're so far off it and so passive, and they look naive and soft. Yeah, so it is what it is. So I'm gonna leave it there tonight. I'm not sure that was coherent or had any real answers in it, but I think hopefully I've tried to sum up what this night and this season has been for Norwich City. And obviously they're heading to an international break now. I think it's a good time for them to regroup and to. It's going to be a disappointed, frustrated dressing room, as it should be. And hopefully we come back for West Brom with more players available, Lucy Mahovo, Matej Jurasek, others as well. And hopefully they can end the season a little bit stronger than they have been over the last 8 games. Thank you very much for watching. Pinkin.com, of course, the place to go. We'll have plenty more coverage and analysis from tonight's game and across the international break as well. See you soon.